What's up? It's Malik Smith from the Action Network, and we're back talking more boxing. This time, it's a little less boxing, a little more circus, but we've got Jake Paul fighting Tyron Woodley this Sunday in Cleveland, and I've got my man Erich Richter here with me to break everything down. So first off, let's talk about who's going to be fighting. For those who don't know Jake Paul, I'm pretty sure there's no one out there who doesn't know who this guy is. He is 3-0 in the boxing ring, surprisingly. He's actually been very good. So far, he's taken down Ali Essen Gibb. He's taken down Nate Robinson. He's taken down former MMA fighter Ben Askren. And now he's taking on Tyron Woodley, who's lost his past 4 fights in the octagon, but is still obviously a former champion, an extremely well-rounded fighter. So, Erich, what should we expect of this fight just from a standpoint of these two guys matching up? What do you expect to see here?
So this is totally different. Thanks, Malik, for the introduction. This is a totally different fight here. It's Tyron Woodley. He's a former champion and a legit puncher. That's the most important detail of this fight. Ben Askren was an NCAA champion wrestler, an Olympic competitor. He was known for his wrestling, and I think and Joe Rogan even said this, I think Ben Askren would even admit he was probably the worst striker in the UFC. So Jake Paul had Ben Askren jump in and say and box him, but he's not a striker. He would even admit to that. So now we have Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley is 19-7 in his MMA career, and at one point was thought to be the best UFC welterweight of all time at certain points. Mostly he was known as an all-around fighter. So that would mean that he's a good grappler, a good boxer, a good kickboxer, a good submission specialist. He has a black belt in jiu-jitsu. But he came off of 4 straight losses. He's 40 years old now. So he's kind of long in the tooth, so to say. But he does have some pretty impressive KO wins via punches. He knocked out Josh Koscheck back in the day, and then he stormed Robbie Lawler in the first round when he won the title years ago. So that is something worth mentioning. Woodley is a great all-around fighter. Now the question is going to be: can he box? And he has that big overhand right. Gilbert Burns talked about it with TMZ earlier in the week. He swings that overhand right pretty consistently, and he lands it at a pretty good clip. If he lands it, it's a good fight. It's a good spot for him. But if he can't land it, he gets counterpunched like what happened against Gilbert Burns, like what happened against Kamaru Usman. Gonna run into problems. It's gonna be an interesting fight.
All right. So Jake Paul, obviously, he's fought 3 times. He's won 3 times. But the difference between Kamaru Usman, Gilbert Burns, and Jake Paul is that those guys are professionals and they've done this for a really long time. And he's done this 3 times against guys who are not boxers at all. And still, somehow, he's a minus 190 favorite right now on Caesars, with Tyron Woodley coming in at plus 160. The over-under set at 3.5 rounds. Caesars has it at the over at minus 125, the under at minus 110. So from a betting standpoint, purely from a betting standpoint, where is the value here in terms of the money line, anything else that you're looking at to bet in this fight?
Yeah, so it depends on your perspective on the fight. Obviously, we've never seen Tyron Woodley in a boxing match. What we do know about Tyron Woodley is that he is a world-class athlete. Tyron Woodley is light years better athlete than Ben Askren. Ben Askren went into that fight and didn't care. He even said it afterwards. He didn't care. He went in, he wanted to get paid. He was in terrible shape. He knew it. He's coming off of hip surgery. He had to get hip replacement surgery because his wrestling days were so taxing on his body. Tyron Woodley theoretically would be in better shape. Obviously, he's coming off of 4 straight losses. But those are against top tier opponents in the UFC. And he didn't look terrible against Vicente Luque. And Vicente Luque is going to get a title shot at 170 pounds for the UFC. So having said all those things, from a betting perspective, I think that Tyron Woodley isn't going to fold like Ben Askren did when he got hit. I think Tyron Woodley can actually take a punch. We've seen him take punches. He's only been knocked out once in his career, and that was via elbows against Nate Marquardt back in Strikeforce. That was years ago. So he has never actually been knocked out via punches before. So I think Woodley can take a punch. And I think that while Jake Paul is significantly larger, which is very important to note, Jake Paul is 6 feet 1 inches tall and has a 76-inch reach. Tyron Woodley is 5'9" and has a 74-inch reach. typically fighting at 170 pounds. This is at 190 pounds. So Woodley's not cutting weight. Jake Paul probably is. Jake Paul will probably be about 210 in there, maybe 200 in that area. So, Paul's going to be a little bit bigger, but Woodley can take a punch. So from my betting perspective, I think that I would bet on a longer fight in this one than the other ones have been. Nate Robinson was 5'9", but his body is significantly smaller than Jake Paul's. That was a very weird fight. And it took him 2 rounds to knock out Nate Robinson. Now, something worth noting is that the ref kind of let that one go and let Robinson kind of go out on his shield a little bit. He probably should have stopped that after the second knockdown in round 2.
I think most people would agree.
Yeah, I don't think we needed to see Nate Robinson get flatlined there. That was pretty scary. But the ref against Ben Askren was a lot more careful. Saw Ben Askren kind of wobbly on the feet, and he's like, nope, no more. I'm done with it. I've seen enough. So from a betting perspective, over 3.5 rounds is plus 118 on FanDuel right now. As you said, Caesars had the over 3.5 rounds at minus 125. So I think that's an interesting spot on FanDuel, considering you're getting plus money. I don't hate to go to decision either at plus 600. I got to be honest. What we have, so there was an interesting stipulation in the contract negotiations here. And I think the contract negotiations can tell you a lot about the story of the fight. Woodley wanted this fight to be a 6-round, 2-minute round fight when he negotiated it. Jake Paul said, no, it's going to be 8 rounds, 3 minutes a round. It's a big difference. Woodley has had problems with his gas tank in the past with cardio. So I think that a late round finish is on the table here. But I think Woodley can take a punch. And I think that Paul is very live here for a late finish. If you want to take a stab on one of the round props, I believe round 6 was plus 1,400 for Jake Paul to win. I think that's an interesting bet. Fight to go decision was plus 600 on multiple sports books. I believe PointsBet had at plus 600. But yeah, I mean, Paul knows that this is a difficult fight for him too. I mean, Woodley can punch. He has an overhand right. He's a legitimate fighter. So, it's going to be an interesting situation here. What do you think, Malik?
Well, I think that professional fighters are not to be toiled with, no matter how many fights they've lost. As a professional, whether you're an MMA fighter, whether you're a boxer, when you're fighting against someone who doesn't have the same amount of experience that you have, Tyron Woodley's in his late 30s, Jake Paul's in his early 20s. So there's a huge gap in terms of the time that they've been doing just pure fighting. Now, the type of fighting that they've been doing, obviously, we can both agree is very different. Our colleague, Billy Ward, actually wrote a piece about the difference between the two and why it's so difficult as someone who's fought and trained in MMA to transition to boxing, because you just don't box as often as you do other things. You have to remind yourself not to throw leg kicks. We saw in the Mayweather versus McGregor fight that, McGregor very quickly lost. He didn't have a whole lot of energy after a certain amount of time because he's not used to fighting that long, right? So I think those things are definitely playing against Woodley, but I find it unbelievably hard to see him losing to someone who has never fought. Now, if this goes to the cards, maybe Paul could win on points, but I don't, as you said, I don't see him not being able to take a punch from a guy, even a guy who's bigger than him and will come in probably a lot stronger in terms of his size. I hesitate to say that I would bet Woodley to win this fight, but I'm with you in terms of taking the over 3.5. I think for sure he can go more than 3.5 rounds in this fight. And I feel like that's probably a really smart bet. I just really find it hard to see Woodley losing this thing. Like I said, I'm not going to play the money line for either guy because you never know. But I mean, this guy's a real fighter. I mean, he's an actual fighter and he's the champion, former champion, right? Like, to me, it's just hard for me to see him losing. I mean, if he loses this, he might have to just stick to rapping.
It's bad for the brand.
It's very bad for the brand.
He needs to win.
We have to shout out the Paul brothers. They know how to put on an absolutely great show. They've done this a few times, so I'll give them a ton of credit for that. But Erich, if you have any last thoughts on this fight, what you expect to see, any other thoughts on the bets, what you got?
Like we just said, I mean, Woodley needs this fight. He needs to win. It's good for his brand. It's good for his rapping career. He has even said that he wasn't great with money when he was at the top of his UFC career. He has said it. He's taken this fight for money, and if he wants to rebuild himself as a boxer or just get another fight with Jake Paul negotiated for a rematch in case Woodley wins. Jake Paul can demand a guaranteed rematch. So Woodley is going to need to win this fight if he wants that second payday with Jake, and then maybe a third one with Logan. Who knows what'll happen? Maybe he'll fight Brad Pitt after that. Who knows? All I know is Tyron Woodley needs money. And if he wants money, he needs to win. So he's going to come in there and he is going to give it everything that he has. He has been training hard. He's undersized, but he will be able to take a punch. If he gets knocked out in the first round, I'll be absolutely mind blown. But I would say that the best bets are going to be over 3.5. And I think decision's a good value at plus 600. I can't take my eyes off of it. At plus 600 bet, you'll have a hard time. You even take a stab at Woodley at decision at plus 2,000. I mean, how could you say no to a plus 2,000 stab like that? It's a good opportunity. It should be a fun fight Saturday night.
Agreed. There you have it. Erich's given you all of the best bets that you could possibly want for this fight. I'm with him in terms of taking the over 3.5. I think that's a great pick. And listen, if Brad Pitt gets into the mix, if it's the Fight Club version of Brad Pitt, I'm taking Brad Pitt every single time. Every single time. There you have it. I'm Malik Smith. He's Erich Richter for the Action Network. Thanks, guys. Later.